And welcome into a new episode of the Zero Technique Football Podcast. I'm your co host, Ryan Stern. You can follow me on Twitter at rstern33. The show is on Twitter at Zero Tech Pod and on Facebook. Just search the Zero Technique Football Podcast. And join with me, as always, is Jared Zero. How you doing tonight, Jared?
I am doing excellent, Ryan. Thank you for asking. How about yourself?
Doing great, doing great. Just counting down the days. We are now under 2 months until my son will be gracing us with his presence. Uh,
Finally, won't be the only man in the house.
oh my God, there is so much estrogen just spewing out all over the place. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I love being a girl dad, but I'm definitely looking forward to having my son. Right now, it looks like it's going to be sometime mid-August. So yeah, we're just counting down the days. Right now, things are still up in the air with what is actually going to happen when he's born. Right now, the guidelines are that uh, only the father can go, no other family members, and if I were to leave, I couldn't come back.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, things are. It's a crazy time to be bringing someone into the world, but yeah, we are so excited for my son to come.
No,
Uh,
absolutely.
so,
And
oh yeah,
oh no, I was just gonna say, and again, congratulations. I probably
yeah,
told you that a million times already, but it's still exciting.
yeah. So today's show is going to be very wide receiver heavy. We will be talking about the rumor mill with Antonio Brown, Josh Gordon having some workouts, maybe getting closer to landing spots. Who knows? We do have our top five continuing, and this week will be with the wide receivers. Towards the end of the show, we will have our way too early playoff predictions. So definitely looking forward to tonight's show, and let's say we'll kick it off with this rumor mill going on.
Yeah.
Uh, Antonio Brown, Josh Gordon, looking like they're appearing out in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm excited for Antonio Brown. I'm excited for Josh Gordon. I think the league has kind of put a damper on Josh Gordon, how they've treated him, especially with his addiction and stuff like that. So it's been hard for him, but it's nice to see that he could be coming back, especially with the NFL's new marijuana policy. And the thing that stood out to me is that the Giants were named as the likely landing spot or the favorite to land Josh Gordon. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I had heard that as well. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense. There isn't a lot of name recognition at the wide receiver position for the Giants. Not since these guys back there. Um, so funny story before we get into
Sure.
that Plaxico Burress jersey that is hanging up on the wall. I had that and I wore it the entire Super Bowl 42 playoff run. So it was the game against the Buccaneers, then the Cowboys, and then the Packers, and then, against Super Bowl 42 against the Patriots. Wore the same. This is part of what makes me crazy. I'm so superstitious, especially when it comes to playoff time. I wore the same Plaxico Burress jersey. I wore the same pair of jeans just, all 4 Sundays that season. Scroll to 4 years later. The Giants are playing the Falcons in the first round. Then then they played the Packers again. This time against Aaron Rodgers, and then against San Francisco. Again, wore my Plaxico Burress jersey. wore the same jeans all throughout. A couple weeks, or in fact, it was the day before the final game of the season where the Giants had to beat the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football to win the division to get into the playoffs. 2 days before that, my daughter was born. My oldest daughter, Harper. And so now we fast forward to it's Super Bowl Sunday. Super Bowl 46 again against the Patriots, and about an hour and a half, maybe even less, maybe about an hour before the game, I'm feeding my daughter, and she throws up all over me, all over the jersey, all over my jeans, and I start freaking out because I said, this is what's going to, the Giants are now going to lose. I'm freaking out. My wife is telling me to shut the F up because we all know that me wearing a jersey or not isn't going to have any outcome on the game, but in my dumb mind, it does. And well, I mean, the Giants won, but so yeah, that's my interesting story about the Plaxico Burress jersey. For those of you that are watching the live stream, I do have Victor Cruz and Plaxico Burress hanging up on my wall.
I have some odd superstitions as well. I mean, my buddy and I, every year when the Patriots are in important games, whether it's the divisional round or the championship round or even the Super Bowl, we always watch the games together because I think we're like 6-2 watching the games together. And if it's a close game, I remember specifically when the Patriots beat the Atlanta Falcons in the Super Bowl. We came back from halftime and nobody could move. If you got up out of your seat, it could only be during a commercial. And that was it. If you had to go to the bathroom, you had to hold it until the next commercial. And we won, and everyone, so anytime someone got up, we would scream at them, sit back down, get back. Whether your legs were crossed or your arm was up behind your head, whatever it was, had to be back in the same exact position. So
a funny story with that Falcons Patriots Super Bowl. I was invited to 2 different Super Bowl parties of 2 very, very close friends of mine that have no association with each other. So I had to make the decision, and I went to one party for pregame and up to halftime, then went to the other party for the second half. And we all know what was going on halftime into the third quarter. The Falcons had a huge lead. I show up to the second party just as the Falcons are making it 28-3. And then the Patriots, and I got the majority. There was one Patriots fan in that house. Everybody else, being New Yorkers, everyone from New Jersey, was rooting against the Patriots. I had people literally beating me because they said, you showed up and now the Patriots are coming back. So yeah, that's my funny story with
that game is just incredible.
Yeah. So let's get back on track. So yeah, Josh Gordon to the Giants. I mean, I can see it making a lot of sense. One, because it's not going to cost the Giants a lot of money because Josh Gordon is going to have to sign a prove-it deal. He's not going to be getting the same kind of money that Antonio Brown can still demand, even though the craziness of the past 18 months that have been the Antonio Brown saga. But yeah, Josh Gordon is definitely a name that makes sense for the Giants. They have Sterling Shepard, who is a really, really, really good number 2 wide receiver, but hasn't shown the ability to produce at a number 1 level while being the number 1 target of the Giants. Golden Tate, again, Golden Tate's a really good slot receiver, number 2 receiver. And then they have Darius Slayton, who showed a ton of promise last year, being rookies at the same time with Daniel Jones During training camp, they were saying that they developed a real close friendship, a good bond, a good working relationship. And Darius Slayton definitely has tons of potential to produce in this system, but none of them possess the physical abilities that Josh Gordon with. Again, Josh Gordon, if his head is on straight, none of them possess the same sort of abilities that Josh Gordon can bring to the Giants. And it makes sense for Josh Gordon because it's going to give him the best ability to jump right in as a number one or number two wide receiver on a team in the NFL.
Right. Now, what other teams do you think would be a good fit for him? Because I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he went back to New England. I mean, they're already familiar with his work ethic in New England. They liked him enough, to have him there for a couple seasons. They traded for him, they brought him back again. I think it, like you said, if his head is on straight, and he's kind of worked through everything he's dealing with, he's a cheap option. And I think adding another veteran alongside of Mohamed Sanu and Julian Edelman would really help with players like Jacoby Myers, N'Keal Harry on the Patriots. So what other teams do you think would be a good fit for Gordon?
Yeah, the Patriots, I guess, make sense, but I think it's a little bit more of a crowded room. He won't be the alpha in the room because that's clearly Julian Edelman. And I just don't think he'll have the pathway to being sort of a star, especially because we still don't know what Jarrett Stidham is.
Right.
We don't, and I think with the lack of an off season that we've had so far, bringing in newer pieces may be a little bit more difficult for someone who hasn't had any real experience in the NFL. So I think keeping those pieces that the Patriots have had around Stidham over the past year or so, maybe the way that they go. But I mean, you're right. It does make sense. I just don't know if it makes more sense for the Patriots, I think, than it makes sense for Gordon.
Right.
One team that I would love to see him go to is Jacksonville. DJ Chark really had a little bit of a breakout last year, but I don't know if he is an established number one in the NFL. I think bringing in someone like Josh Gordon can only help Gardner Minshew in his development. We saw some really good things out of Minshew last year. So I think something like that, a team like Jacksonville, would make a lot of sense for him.
No, that's a fair assessment, and I definitely don't disagree there. I just personally, I'm a fan of Josh Gordon, so I just want wherever he goes, I want to see him thrive, and I wish him the best. I mean, addiction is not something that addiction is something that weighs heavily on me, considering issues with my family, stuff like that. So I can kind of relate to what he's going through, from a distance, and so I would love to see him make a bounce back.
Yeah, one of my best years in fantasy football was the year that I had Josh Gordon as my breakout, and with Jason Campbell as his quarterback, he was the number one receiver in the NFL. It just shows the immense talent that this kid possesses. Again, it's all about whether or not he can stay on the straight and narrow.
Right.
And the other name that we've been hearing a lot about is Antonio Brown, and I think the two teams that we're hearing with AB, I'm hearing Seattle and Baltimore.
Yep.
Seattle doesn't make a ton of sense to me. They have an established number one in Tyler Lockett. They have a kid in DK Metcalf who is coming off of a really, really strong second half of the season last year and looking to establish himself at the top of that chain. And all along, the Seahawks are a running team. Their identity is that of a running team. So I don't know if Antonio Brown, to me, makes a ton of sense in Seattle, but Baltimore, he makes a 1,000% sense in Baltimore. Their top wide receiver is a guy who specializes in 9 routes in Hollywood Brown. You can make the argument that Mark Andrews is their number one receiver from the tight end position, which is a distinct possibility. But Antonio Brown would come in and be the number one right away. And with someone like Lamar Jackson, who is only progressing so far every year, bringing in someone who is just he's a difference maker when he's on the field. I mean, you look at when he was traded to the Patriots last year, he had no practice time, goes out and has 2 touchdowns in the only game he plays in New England.
Right.
I don't think he necessarily needs a ton of work with a quarterback to be on the same page. And if he ends up in Baltimore, oh boy, week 3, you kidding me? Week 3, Monday Night Football, Kansas City, Baltimore. The entire eyes of the country are going to be on that game. And they probably are already, but you throw Antonio Brown into the mix, forget about it.
Yeah, and that's the point you made about Seattle is very fitting, where they already have a number one in Tyler Lockett. But I wanted to actually talk about another team for a minute, and I want to talk about the Houston Texans from last year. The Houston Texans had, with Will Fuller, they had DeAndre Hopkins, they're the Kenny Stills, Darren Fells at tight end. I mean, that team had such a strong wide receiver core that if DeAndre Hopkins was being double teamed all game, Will Fuller is going to have an insanely good game. Because not a lot of people can beat him one-on-one. Right? So he's gonna have crazy good numbers that whole game. So to the point you're making about Seattle, I think Antonio Brown would be a perfect fit for that team, because now you put him on a team that their identity is a running team, but now their wide receiver core consists of Antonio Brown, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. You can't double team all of them. So one of those 3 is going to have a standout game every single Sunday. And I just don't think there is a defense that would be able to consistently stop all 3 of them.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know where he fits in terms of a mindset. Is he going to want, whenever he shows up to a team, demand that he's the number one target? Because if he does demand something like that, Seattle's not the right spot for him.
No.
Especially because of the fact that they have this rushing identity to them, and they have Russell Wilson, who is the king of spreading the ball around.
Right.
He's not going to lock onto a target the way that I think Antonio Brown thinks that he deserves.
Well, that's not.
And it's fine, because when you were bringing up the Houston Texans and the way that they were, I thought you were going with that Houston would be a good landing spot for him. And you know what? I think Houston
they would be, absolutely.
Is a pretty good landing spot, because, I mean, obviously they lost DeAndre Hopkins. They bring in Brandon Cooks, who is not a number one in my book, even though he keeps getting traded for first-round draft picks and Hall of Famers. I mean, it's unbelievable what other teams are able to get in return for Brandon Cooks. They brought in Randall Cobb, Will Fuller whenever he's healthy, which isn't that often. Kiki Kuti, who we were looking for a good development from last year, didn't really get to see that. I think if Houston is a team with an emerging quarterback in Deshaun Watson, who is in need of a number one receiver. I just don't know if the link between Antonio Brown and Bill O'Brien is something that would work.
No, absolutely not. And I agree with what you said. I do think if the Texans as a whole would be a good fit for him, considering their situation on their roster currently. But I mean, when I heard it was between Seattle and Baltimore currently, with the internal talks about potentially bringing him in for a workout, I was super excited. I mean, like you said, he would be an 1,000% great fit in Baltimore, playing alongside of his cousin, and I think that would just be super, super cool. And having Lamar Jackson with, a wide receiver like Antonio Brown, who, let's face it, whether you love or hate the guy, his numbers, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I have no doubt in my mind about that. And I think having a wide receiver like that would be great for Lamar Jackson, especially so early in his career.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's it for the rumor mill. That again, we're in such a light news time right now. The only other, I guess, big news that we saw over the past week was Dak Prescott signing his franchise tender, guaranteeing the $31.4 million. They have until July 15th to work out a long-term extension. I keep hearing that they're far away. That they aren't even that close in terms of. I think they're getting closer in terms of years, but in terms of dollars, it's not that close. It's funny because it sounds like Dak is looking for a shorter term, like in the 4-year range, and Dallas is looking for a 5 to 6 year term at a lower dollar, but saying, look at all the money you're going to get out here. These next few weeks are going to be very interesting with that. So we are going to continue with our top 5. And this week is the top 5 receivers in the NFL right now. Jared, why don't you take it over?
Sure. So, man, there's so many receivers that I want to talk about. But the number one receiver that I want to talk about right now, and I am going to get a lot of slack for this one, but my number one receiver in the league right now is Tyler Lockett.
Whoa.
Yeah. It has nothing to do. No, it has nothing to do with his, outstanding ability like someone like Michael Thomas or Julio Jones. What is my number one thing when I talk about a player? It is consistency. Tyler Lockett, by far, in my opinion, he got snubbed from the Pro Bowl last year. I think Tyler Lockett is one of the best wide receivers in the league. He is easily a top 10 wide receiver. But to me, he is my number one just because he's a great route runner. He can consistently make plays. He's a reliable target. And it's just no matter, what you're going to get out of him. He's not somebody that you have to wonder about. You are getting a solid receiver out of him anytime he steps onto that field. So for me, personally, I am going with Tyler Lockett as my number one.
Wow, yeah. In the words of Ron Burgundy, agree to disagree. My number one wide receiver is the number one wide receiver in the NFL, and you talk about consistency. How about catching 82.5% of his targets over the past 2 years, breaking the record for most receptions in a season last year. People call him a system wide receiver. Well, you know what? He plays with the ultimate system quarterback in Drew Brees, and that number one wide receiver is Michael Thomas. He just does whatever is asked of him. Is that 82.5% of his targets he has caught? That is insane. You don't get 80%. I don't know how many times a wide receiver has caught 80% of his targets in one season, and he's done it in back-to-back. Michael Thomas is number one, and it's not even close for me.
And he's my number two. It's like you said, he also is the definition of consistency. And to go back to Tyler Lockett for a minute, I just personally feel he doesn't get the recognition he deserves, kind of, which is why he's so high up on my list. But like you said, you hit the nail on the head with everything about Michael Thomas. I mean, that guy just his Twitter handle basically is perfect. Can't guard Mike. Yeah. You can't guard him effectively, and then expect him to have a bad game. He is going to. It's like his hands are a magnet for the football. They'll go right to him every single time. So my number two would be Michael Thomas.
My number two is a little bit of a surprise. I think most people will have him in the top 5, but most people won't have him at number 2. And my number 2 is Tyreek Hill. Again, a lot of this has to do with the system that he's in. He is the perfect wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs offense. He has 20 touchdowns of 40 yards or more already in his career. I mean, 3 years to have 20 touchdowns of 40 yards or more is it's unheard of. Tyreek Hill just offers, and he is the key cog to that offense. Sure, a lot of it has to do with the pairing up of his speed with Patrick Mahomes' arm, but everything that they're able to do underneath with Travis Kelce may not be Travis Kelce without Tyreek Hill. Damian Williams is not Damian Williams without Tyreek Hill. Patrick Mahomes may not be Patrick Mahomes without Tyreek Hill. He is the definition of a difference maker right now, and that's why he's my number 2.
No, that is a great pick, and that guy is insanely fast. I remember one of the games where I forget who it was, went on like a 90-something yard run or kick return or whatever, and Tyreek Hill like caught up with them like by the 50-yard line, and everyone's looking at him like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But my number 3 is DeAndre Hopkins. Not only does DeAndre Hopkins have one of the most incredible backstories in the NFL,
yep.
The talent that he possesses is. I personally, if I was ranking them based on my opinion of who's the best in the league rather than my personal top 5, DeAndre Hopkins would be number 1, no doubt. I think he's better than Michael Thomas. I think he's better than Julio Jones. DeAndre Hopkins he is such a strong presence on the field that it's even if a defense is double teaming him, they're still going to, they're still going to struggle effectively guarding him. He's going to score. I mean, I feel like he is the all-around complete receiver. He has the perfect route running. He's got impeccable speed. He can catch a cold in the desert. He's just everything you would look for in the perfect wide receiver package. So for my number 3 is DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, my number 3 is DeAndre Hopkins also. Part of what makes a great wide receiver is knowing how to be great. And I don't know if you've seen the video that surfaced last year, um, and I believe it was when the Texans were playing the Cardinals. Funny that it turned out this way, but one of the Texans coaches goes up to DeAndre Hopkins during warmups uh, before the game, and he said that he was talking with one of the Cardinals coaches, and he said Hopkins is the best in the game, and Hopkins goes, "I know."
Yeah.
I mean, he has the mindset that it takes to be an alpha wide receiver. Yeah, he's very. You cannot cover him one on one. I mean, his hands are just freakishly huge. He's able to wrap his fingers around the ball. Um, he has a nose for the sticks. He knows where he has to be and where how many yards he has to get every time he makes a play. And he has, like you said, he has a perfect mindset to be a wide receiver. So he is my number 3.
And before I go on to my number 4, I do want to just mention that as much as, like you said, he goes, I know that I'm the best, right? When he's complimented, he doesn't brag about it. He's very humble. He's a quiet person. He's not out there on Twitter saying, I'm the best, I'm this, I'm that. He's quiet, he's silent. He knows that he's the best. He knows that he's so great. He doesn't have to brag about it. And that's one of the things I respect the most about him. But continuing on to my number 4, I got to go with Julio Jones. I mean, that guy just. I don't even know where to begin with him. I mean, he is an absolute freak athletically. The some of the catches he makes are unbelievable, and he makes it look routine. The toe tap catches, the one hand catches, the backflip behind the head, whatever catches. It's like he can do them in his sleep. And the thing about Julio Jones, right, is he's not the most consistent wide receiver. But when his game is on, he is really on. And his athletic ability just kind of separates him from the rest of the pack.
So I had a tough time deciding between my number 4 and my number 5. And the tiebreaker that I decided upon was consistency in touchdowns. And even though we did see a little bit of a drop off last year in terms of touchdown production, I think some of that had to do with the first time really that he was injured. So I still I think we're going to get a positive touchdown regression from this guy this year, and that's Davante Adams. Davante Adams of the Green Bay Packers is my number 4 wide receiver in the NFL this year. I mean, double-digit touchdowns, you can just pencil him in every single year. If he stays healthy, he's just going to get it. And now we have a motivated Aaron Rodgers with everything they did between drafting Jordan Love in the first, not drafting any wide receivers for him at his disposal. And there is nobody who is going to threaten Davante Adams in terms of target percentage. If I had to place a bet right now on which wide receiver in the NFL has the largest target share in terms of their team's receptions, it's going to be Davante Adams. It's the Davante Adams show this year in Green Bay. The other guys that he's going to have to stave off are Allen Lazard, Equanimeous St. Brown, I'm not sure if Marquez Valdez-Scantling is still there. It's just not names that really are going to threaten that at all. And he's just, again, this is your word. He's really consistent for me. So Davante Adams is my number 4.
Now, give me 1 sec because I have been racking my brain trying to figure out my number 5, and there are, at least 4 or 5 different receivers that I can go with. But honestly, I mean, you brought up a great point saying that most people should have Tyreek Hill in their top 5. I mean, you brought up another great point with having, Davante Adams in your top 5. But one person that I think isn't talked about a lot that should be talked about, who I'm going to put in my top 5, is Keenan Allen. I think Keenan Allen, it makes the Chargers what they are. Obviously, the Chargers aren't known for being a great team. I mean, they've been led by Phillip Rivers, who hasn't been the best quarterback for a while. I mean, but that offense is stacked. I mean, you have Austin Eckler. I mean, they did have Melvin Gordon, but I feel like without Keenan Allen, that offense just isn't nearly as strong, and I don't think they win as many games without him. So for me, I think by just putting him on that team alone helps them get, 4 or 5 more wins normally than they would.
Yeah, I think Keenan Allen is a little past the prime age where I'm looking for in terms of making this list right now. There were 3 people that I was considering here at number 5. The 2 that did not make it were our teammates, actually, and they are Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. They were in consideration for my number 5, and I think maybe having them on the same team maybe split the votes a little bit and kept them both out of the number 5 spot. I don't know, but it's really tough to put out a top 5 wide receivers list and not have Julio Jones in it. Julio Jones is my number 5. The only reason why he is as low as he is at number 5 is his injury history. They're just it doesn't always come in the form of him missing games, but there are too many times where Julio Jones gets nicked up one week and he plays the next week, but he's just a flat out decoy. There's just too many times that he could have been out there. Now, when he is out there and when he is healthy, there may not be a more physically gifted wide receiver in the league right now. But with his size, speed, and catching ability, his route running for someone as big as he is outstanding. And another thing, again, this is why Davante Adams got the tiebreaker. Why is Julio Jones always amongst the leaders in receiving yards in the NFL, but is always at 5, 6, 7, 3, 4, 2, 5 touchdowns a year? When are we going to see that big blow-up season where he gives us those double-digit? You know who he reminds me a lot of? Andre Johnson from the Texans. Andre Johnson could have been one of the more elite wide receivers over the past 25 years. He just could never get into the end zone. So I think that's one of the reasons why he fell to number 5 for me.
To your point that you were just talking about is actually something I, should have brought up about Julio Jones. And you do bring up a great point. He doesn't get into the end zone a lot. To me, Julio Jones is obviously, to everybody, he's a deep threat. he is not, in my opinion, I don't think he's great at those short little slant routes that, or those little, like, you're 10, 15 yards out from the end zone. It's just, he's not good at those little routes that a lot of times the Falcons require to get that score. So that's why you see more of a guy like Calvin Ridley being the one getting the touches towards the end zone.
Yeah, so we actually did have a comment from a viewer of our live stream on Facebook. Scott had said, "Let's keep it positive with AB. I would give him another chance, one last chance." And I think we did a pretty good job of keeping it positive with Antonio Brown. We were realistic, and we were sort of laying the framework for teams that would give him a platform or a pathway to regaining the excellence that Antonio Brown had. Antonio Brown is the best wide receiver in the NFL over the past decade. I mean, there are no ifs, ands, or buts about that one. He played in a perfect system for him, and he did again. When you're a difference maker, it doesn't matter how many guys are on you, you're going to find a way to get open. And to be honest, if we didn't have all of the craziness with Antonio Brown over the past year and a couple months, Antonio Brown would have easily made this top 5 list.
Yeah, and to Scott's point about keeping it positive, I do want to give props to Antonio Brown. When was the last time you heard his name in the news? Obviously, we heard him a lot last season. He got into a bunch of trouble, but I mean, I can't remember. I mean, it's been at least 4 or 5 months since we've heard something negative about him. But I mean, I see him posting all the time on whether it's Instagram or Twitter or even Facebook about his workouts and the things that he's doing. And I do have to give him a lot of credit. I mean, someone must have said the right thing to him at some point and said, you know what, you need to get your head on straight or you're never going back into the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely.
And something had to have resonated with him to get him to just shut up and keep his head down and keep working. And to go back to what we were talking about, where you said that he might demand being the number 1 target in Seattle, is if he does keep his mouth shut, maybe he doesn't do that. You know what I mean? So I think there's a lot of I think there's a lot more upside and positivity to Antonio Brown now than a lot of people are thinking.
So if you had to choose one team that may not necessarily be a guaranteed locked-in playoff team or a guaranteed Super Bowl team or something like that, what team would that be that if they signed Antonio Brown now gets put into that playoff conversation, that Super Bowl conversation?
All right, so not to be a homer, but I'm going to go with the Patriots this year. The Patriots, I think, this year are a coin flip team. Nobody knows what they're going to do. No, they could go 5-5. They could go 10-6. Or like they can go 500. They can go, whatever. There's no telling what type of team the Patriots are going to be. However, I personally don't think if they do make it to the playoffs, I don't think they're making it past the divisional round, if that. However, I think if you throw Antonio Brown back onto the Patriots, let's say, Robert Kraft decides to forgive him for what he said and stuff like that, and Bill Belichick's like, yeah, we'll give you another chance. I think a player like Antonio Brown kind of just boosts the morale for the wide receiver core. I mean, you're going to have a guy like Mohamed Sanu trying to compete with Antonio Brown, so Mohamed Sanu is going to want to be better. Julian Edelman's obviously the clear number 1 for that team. Now he's going to fight with Antonio Brown to be better. And then you have guys like N'Keal Harry and Jacoby Myers who are going to be looking up to him, who would probably have been looking up to him for the past, 3 or 4 years, watching him develop and become one of the greatest wide receivers we've ever seen. So I think that putting him on the Patriots without knowing what that team has in Jarrett Stidham makes the most sense.
All right, so this is what we like to call in the business a segue. We will now get into our way too early playoff predictions. All right, so let's take our way too early division winners. Next week we'll get into teams that could be wild cards. Again, we're trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen with this season. But we'll get into wild cards and maybe even deeper into the playoffs next year. So let's take care of the division winners. You want to start off with the AFC?
Sure. So my division winners for the AFC are as follows, and this one's going to pain me to say, but the AFC East division winners are going to be the Buffalo Bills. For the AFC North, there's no doubt in my mind it's going to be the Baltimore Ravens. The AFC South, I would love to say the Colts, but I really, really deep in my heart feel like it's going to be the Tennessee Titans. And then the AFC West is the Chiefs. There's no question about that.
Yeah, so we're almost in lockstep. I too am going to go Buffalo Bills in the AFC East.
Oh,
I too am going to go with the Ravens in the North, and I will go with the Chiefs in the West. And that team that you were thinking about, that's going to be my team in the South with the Indianapolis Colts. I think Rivers is just going to give them just a more steady production than they got out of Jacoby Brissett last year. Bringing in Michael Pittman, I think, is going to Michael Pittman. A lot of people were comping him during draft season to Mike Williams, and now he goes to Phillip Rivers, where Phillip Rivers had Mike Williams with the Los Angeles Chargers. Yes, I got it right. I know I'm still going to say San Diego one of these times, but I think it's a perfect fit for Michael Pittman to have success early, and they still do have T.Y. Hilton. They have, to me, the best offensive line in the entire NFL right now, and they made the trade to acquire DeForest Buckner just to reinforce that defense up the middle. The Colts are going to be one of my favorite teams to watch this year.
Don't get me wrong. I am rooting for the Colts to win that division. I just feel the Titans kind of just have all the pieces they need right now. So, I mean, I hope that the Colts are the winners of that division, but I couldn't go with my gut instinct on that one. But why don't you kick it off with the NFC, Ryan?
All right, so for the NFC, again, as this will pain me, Dallas Cowboys are, to me, the best team in the division. Defensively, may not be a great team, but they may have the number one offense in the entire NFL this year. It would not shock me. In the North, I am going to go with the Minnesota Vikings. I just really feel that it's time for them to make that ascent. I think replacing Stephon Diggs with Justin Jefferson is going to be addition by subtraction. I just think that it makes a ton of sense, and they had my favorite draft class of anyone in the NFL this year. If Dalvin Cook can stay healthy, I think the Vikings take the North. The South is going to be, in my eyes, the best division in the entire NFL. The teams that weren't great last year were the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They get Tom Brady. And the Carolina Panthers, they upgrade from Kyle Allen to Teddy Bridgewater. Yeah, it's still a pretty decent upgrade in my opinion. And then they spent their entire draft on fixing that defense. They bring in Robbie Anderson to complement. So the bad teams in that division got better, and then you have the good teams like the Falcons and the Saints, who are still going to be good. I can easily see every team in this division winning at least 7 games. Again, it's all going to be based on quarterback play, but I'm still going to go with the Saints until they can prove me wrong. And then out west, I think we see a bounce back from the LA Rams.
All right, so obviously the NFC East, I'm going to say the Cowboys. I think that is the weakest division in the NFL. I'm sorry, because I know you love the Giants. The NFC North, I'm picking the Vikings. I would love to see the Chicago Bears make a bounce back, but I mean, I don't think their offense is quite there yet. So obviously the Vikings are going to be the team to beat this year, in my opinion. But for the NFC South, I'm going with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, I'm a Panthers fan. I love the Panthers. I think
you're a Brady fan.
Listen, I'm realistic. Brady is the greatest quarterback who has ever played this game. And I'm not even talking as a Patriots fan. I could be a fan of any team. I don't even have to be. Listen, helmet catch, lucky.
Oh, by the way, did you see? Did you watch the Barstool pizza reviews?
Sometimes.
So Portnoy was doing a pizza review in Morristown, New Jersey, which is actually it was around the corner from one of the rinks I play hockey in. And it happened to be that he was doing this review on the day that David Tyree was opening up he has a clean juice bar. Mm-hmm. And it was his grand opening. And it was like 3 doors away from the pizza place that Portnoy was doing his review at. And so Joe Rubeck, license plate guy, saw Portnoy, got him to come over and say hi to David Tyree. And Portnoy is Mr. Boston. Right. Goes up to David Tyree, and Tyree goes, "It's a pleasure to meet you." And Portnoy goes, "It's not nice to meet you." Listen, I laughed so hard.
Listen, I can't hate, right? I can't hate. I mean, it's fun watching underdogs win, right? As much as it pains me, I got to give the Giants credit.
Your team hasn't been an underdog in 20 years.
I'm talking about the Giants. As much as it upset me, it was nice to see the underdog win. Not my team, not at all. But no, I think the Buccaneers will take the NFC South. I think adding Brady and adding Gronk, who is I can't name a better quarterback tight end duo than those two, with a wide receiver system consisting of Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. I don't see how that team's being stopped. I wouldn't be surprised if the Saints took the division, but my gut is telling me the Buccaneers. And then for the West, I'm going with the Seahawks. Consistency is, in my opinion, like I say it every time we're on, is the key to success, in my opinion. I think if Chris Carson can tighten it up with no fumbles, I think that running game becomes that much stronger. Their wide receiver core, obviously, we all know how I feel about Tyler Lockett and Russell Wilson. So I just don't see them, losing that division either. But I agree with what you said about the NFC South. I think that is going to be the most fun division to watch, watching Brady and Breeze battle it out twice a year, maybe 3 times a year if we're lucky. in the NFC Championship round. So
in fact, right now, the Saints have the fourth best odds, according to Vegas, at plus 1,200. And the Buccaneers have the fifth best odds at plus 1,400. So again, Vegas is saying that we are going to be in store for one hell of a race in the NFC South.
no, I'm excited for it, and I mean, as much as I love Cam Newton and how badly I think the Panthers organization handled his situation, I'm excited to see what Teddy Bridgewater can do. I think after what he displayed in New Orleans last year with Drew Brees being injured, I think he definitely deserves his shot. I think it's going to be really great for him. But I did want to bring up one point as to why I chose the Buccaneers over. I wanted to say why I chose the Buccaneers over the Saints. If the Buccaneers can win 7 games with 30-30 Jameis Winston, I am terrified to see how many games they can win with Gronk and Brady.
Oh, Jameis Winston's 2020 now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, dad joke right there. Dad joke. I am the king of dad jokes.
Oh man, that was brutally painful
Yes.
to listen to.
Oh, you set me up for it perfectly, and I knocked it out of the park.
No, I did. That was good.
All right, so yeah, that's we actually we have a comment from Jason Long. How you doing, Jason? Miss you, bud. Hope everything is going well in Myrtle Beach. And his comment is scared to learn what Vegas says about my Jets. Yeah, it's not pretty, Jay. Got to tell you that. But to be honest, it's actually a tiny bit prettier than my Giants. The Jets are currently going off at plus 7,000. And the Giants are going off at plus 8,000. So you got me there on that one, bud. Hope all is doing well. And that is going to wrap it up for this week's show. Everyone, make sure that you are checking out www.backsportspage.com. Over there, you can check out all the great content going up. You can subscribe to our great array of podcasts and web shows. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. You can click the little bell, let you know when any of our web shows are going live. Again, check out the show on Twitter at ZeroTechPod. I am rstern33 on Twitter. Jared.
I am at journalistj0. It's not too hard to find me. I'm pretty sure I'm the only Jared Zero on Earth. So,
and on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, make sure you are subscribed. Search for the Zero Technique Podcast, and it'll let you know when our shows get released. So looking forward to next week's show. We will be talking more NFL. We'll get into some more of the way too early playoff predictions, and we will get into our top 5 tight ends in the NFL. So Jared, hope you have a great week, and talk to you soon.
You as well, Ryan. You as well, Ryan. I'm getting all tongue twisted.
All right, everyone. Hope you have a great week. Stay safe. And in the words of the Beatles, and in the end, the love you make is equal to the love you take.